Hello, friends. I have to say that I am nervous about this live. I am nervous because I'm doing it from my office as opposed to my home office, so I'm always worried that the internet access isn't going to be that great. Um, I'm nervous because I'm doing it from my office and I have my little tripod here, and I'm just petrified it's going to fall over halfway through, and that's always stressful. And I'm super, super excited about doing it as well because I literally have been like chasing after Nicole Jardim, who wrote Fix Your Period for I don't know how long. I've been chasing her, and I know you're seeing this backwards, which is super irritating. But you guys send in so many questions about your period. Hi there, hustling human Aviva. It's so nice to see you. And I've been like getting flooded with questions. So people are asking questions about the color of the period, the timing of the period, why their breasts are sore, and I'm really hoping that Nicole gets a chance to answer all these questions. So for all those reasons, because the period is something that's super important to everybody, I see Nicole, so now I just gotta invite her to join. Let's see if we can do that. Hold on, I just waved. I did not mean to wave to Nicole. Nicole just asked to join. Hold on a second. Hold on. Invite, 1 second. Oh no, with Nicole Jardim. There we go. Let's see if this works. And I'm always stressed out because like I never know the internet's gonna work as well in my office. I'm never sure my tripod's not gonna collapse over, but I'm so
Hi. Hi. I'll fix this a
I
little
feel
bit.
like when the technology works, it's always like this shocking thing to my
Thank
system.
Thank God.
And
Yes.
exactly, the Instagram gods are with us. Is how kind of how I feel.
I
How are
know.
you?
I'm really good. How about you? It's so
I'm
nice
good.
to see you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Perfectly. Can you hear me
Nicole.
okay?
I cannot. Yeah, perfectly. I
Okay,
cannot tell
good.
you the number of questions since I posted those questions. A whole other group of questions came in. I think
Oh, really?
everybody. Yes,
Oh,
everybody wants
everybody
to know about
wants
their
to know.
freaking period.
Everybody wants to know. Sorry, I was just turning off the Wi-Fi on my computer to make sure that my everything is working properly
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
country internet, it's not that great.
It's so funny. I just said I usually do these from home at night, and so I'm at the office,
Yes.
which is great because I'm actually dressed like a human being. I feel like
Look
woohoo,
at
I'm like
you.
jewelry and everything. I know it's like crazy,
I dressed
but
up for you.
I lipstick and everything. So I just was so excited to have you. I told people I've been chasing you around trying to get this to happen.
I know. I'm
Nicole's
so
like
excited.
the busiest person I know. So
Me? Really? Oh, well, I was. I'm not anymore. Thank
oh
God.
really?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I
You
feel
give
like,
2 out of your 17 million things? Is that?
yeah. You're so funny. No, I've legit actually stopped doing so many things. It's now 2021. I'm not launching a book anymore, like you.
Book. I just showed your book. I'm showing your book.
I
I
know.
think
Thank
that
you.
books show up
It's an,
backwards. Do you know like books show up
it
backwards? I
does.
think
Yeah,
so.
everything shows up
But this
backwards. It's
says
so
Fix
annoying.
Your Period by Nicole Jardim, just so you know. And Nicole's talking to us about all things period because I feel like I know a lot about
Yes.
sex, but I have to say, periods kind of less so. And the number of questions that have come in, like about
Yeah.
the timing of the period, the kind of blood they're getting, pain. So we're going to try to cover some of that stuff. But why don't you
Okay.
first start telling people why you wrote the book? Because I think that's super, super interesting.
Yes, I would love to. I think that, for me, I really struggled. I had terrible periods as a teenager, and I remember just feeling like there were no options. There was nothing for me. And my mom had said to me that she had really bad periods too and just assumed all of what I was experiencing was completely normal. So I never saw a doctor. I just kind of like lived through the monthly anguish of insane pain. I felt like I was seeing stars with the pain I had. It was like kind of like that. And I had really heavy periods. I would go to friends' houses for sleepovers and their mom would have to put a towel down on the bed for me. It's beyond mortifying. I'd miss school a lot of the time. So this was just an ongoing thing for a number of years. And finally something weird happened, which my mom had never experienced. I started to not get a period. So every like 3 or 4 months I would get a period. And then of course it would be excruciating. And that kind of came out of nowhere. And she was like, okay, I've never seen that before. I think maybe we should go to the doctor. And of course I went, and she immediately put me on the pill. So there was never a conversation about what could be going on. And so I never had an understanding that your period was a marker or a barometer for your overall health and your lifestyle. And I think that's like the biggest disservice even now, right? That women and girls and menstruators don't understand how their bodies work and what their period problems actually mean, and that they are not something that you should just dismiss and just say, okay, well, this is what I'm dealing with. I'll just go on the pill, or I'll get in on an IUD and call it a day. And so that really, for me,
I have to say, I feel like I see that with pain with intercourse or pain with sex. Like I
oh
feel
my
like
gosh,
people,
yes.
they have pain and they're like, okay, I guess that's kind of how it's supposed to be. So I'm just going to live with it. And I'm like, no, that is not freaking how it's supposed to be. Okay, so keep going.
Right? Totally. Oh my gosh, I completely agree with that. And so it's definitely like, I always say this, period pain or period problems are statistically normal, but they're not biologically normal. It's the same with sex, like pain with sex. So I love that comparison, because it's so true. And so for me, I kind of wrote this book for my teenage self as much as I wrote it for everyone else who is really struggling all over the world. And I know, I love that you have my book. I do not have a copy of my book sitting in front of me. This is embarrassing. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on here? Anyway, so
I
fast
love
forward.
And I love the pink. Like anybody
I
follows me have like a pink. I love pink, so it makes me very happy.
I like the pink too.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, you're a grown up and I'm not, clearly. I mean, like, look at the tagline of my book. It's ridiculous. So the point is that I really felt so strongly that I needed to give this information to as many people as I possibly could. And this is critical life and health information. And in fact, it's life-saving information, because I feel personally that women right now are dealing with such an extensive list of menstrual cycle related issues that can be addressed, but are not being given the information about how to interpret what these issues mean and how to address them sustainably. And so that was really the gist of it. That was why I do all this work.
And women have reacted like unbelievably positively, because I feel like we don't have enough information.
Yes.
So why don't you start? Why don't you say, like, I think the thing I got most questions about, although they were all over the place, was like what the timing of the period. Like, what does it say to you if the period is shorter than later than usual? Like, not. Or maybe you want to start with something more general. I'm going to kind of leave that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I should close my office door. I'm so sorry. Give me 2 seconds, because my dogs are barking.
I'll come back.
Next thing you know, they just come flying in here.
You should
oh
bring
my goodness.
your dogs in. I'm sure your dogs have what to say about people's periods also.
I mean, perhaps, I don't know. They're not quite there yet. We call them the period pups for fun. I know, it's ridiculous. But I would say, okay, so when it comes to the length of a cycle, what the science says is 21 to 35 days. So that's kind of what the general consensus is. I prefer to see a period somewhere coming between 25 and 35 days. And some people don't even realize the difference between the length of your menstrual cycle and the length of your actual period. So length of your entire menstrual cycle from day 1 of bleeding until the day before next bleeding, I like to see 25 to 35 days, and not a ton of fluctuation in between those. So if you typically get a period every like 27 days or so, then you want to see that like every, somewhere between 26 and 29 days. So somewhere around there. Like there's not like 8 or 9 days of fluctuation. So you're not getting it 25 days 1 month and then 35 days the next month, and then you're back to 26 days. So I think that that's really important. And what that indicates to me is that you're ovulating consistently every single cycle. And so with the length of your actual period, ideally you're looking somewhere between 3 and 7 days. Most women are about 4 to 5 days, according to the literature. But generally speaking, 3 to 7 days, I think is totally normal. Again, like that's just one part of it. And I always encourage everyone to really pay attention to all of these biomarkers, because they're really important. The length of your cycle, how much you're bleeding, how long your period is, the color of your menstrual blood. I know someone asked about that, and a few other things, just so that you have a full picture of what's going on with your period, because ultimately the length of your cycle is just one part of the picture. And if you are just paying attention to that and thinking, oh, well, my cycle is probably abnormal based on this, that might not necessarily be the case. So I think that ultimately, if your period is somewhere between 3 and 7 days, and your cycle is somewhere between 25 and 35 days consistently, then you're doing good. So that's a good first step. I think that, yeah. I know there's like lots more questions, so I can keep going.
No.
If you want.
I guess it's so funny for me to hear you, because first of all, let's start with the fact that I'm 59 and I'm menopausal. I've been menopausal for a lot. So this is a little bit behind me, I think. But what's really funny to me, and where I feel a little bit like, you ever feel bad about like good luck? Like my husband used to joke around that my period was like a Mack truck. Like it was always 29 days, 29 days. I had babies. Basically, 29 days later, I started, even though I was nursing full time, like it was regular. It came. It was 2-3 days. Like I almost didn't understand women who were complaining about long periods, short periods, pain, and I really had no pain for the most part. Like, so I'm like, I know that I must be in that, what, 5%? You tell me, what percent of women actually have normal periods?
That's a really good question. You know, I posted something yesterday on stories asking people like what they felt like their hormones were doing on a monthly basis, because I had a funny picture about that, like what they're actually supposed to do versus what they're doing. And 78% of people who responded said they feel like they're the crazy hormones. And I'm just thinking, what in the hell is going on with everybody? And I really, I have seen a meteoric rise in period related problems and then the sort of severity of these problems over the last 10 years in the work that I've been doing. And it's specifically in the last 5 years. And I really, I think that I don't know who coined this term, the term evolutionary mismatch, but I really feel like there's something to be said for this. Women's bodies, we don't do so well with the crazy stress of modern life, and we don't do so well with the lack of, adequate nutrients and the assault on our gut health because of the food that we're eating and the stress in our lives, and just like being constantly overwhelmed and burnt out. Like our hormones, as you know, our hormones are delicate, and it's difficult to get them back in balance once they're out of balance, and they're out of balance for so long, especially because of the fact that everything that all of the signs of hormonal imbalance, like you can't sleep well, or you can't wake up properly in the morning, or you have energy crashes, or you have period problems,
or you
have
want
no sex drive. Yes, no sex drive. All of this is perpetually normalized in our society. It's just like, oh, you can't sleep? Well, take a sleeping pill. Oh, you can't get up in the morning? Drink a gallon of coffee. Oh, you have energy crashes? Here's some candy, or, an energy bar. So this is what we do, right? We Band-Aid for years and years, and then shit hits the fan and we're in trouble.
And the fact that you're seeing an increase in this, which, you never know when you're in this field, if you're seeing an increase because you see all the cases, right? Like I feel like
I know, yeah.
That's right. But I think that there is definitely an increase. And I feel like we're seeing it, honestly, I also see it with the other thing I'm kind of interested with, like nutrition and body size and ability to manage that. Something's off. I feel like something is just off for all of us. So I don't know. Yes. I guess my question to you, I can go through these questions, but I guess what would be most interesting to start with is if you said to women, like, how should they think about their period? Like, what do you think women should think about when they're thinking about their period and trying to understand their health? Let's start with that.
That's great. Yeah. I fundamentally believe your period is a barometer of your overall health and how your hormones are working. And so when you think about your period, think about it as a messenger. It's constantly communicating with you every single cycle throughout your cycle. And so one of the first things I ask everyone to do that I work with is to track your cycle. So start paying attention to the basics. If you've never done this before, the basics, how long your period is, how long your menstrual cycle is, what your symptoms are in the lead up to your period. So what are you experiencing? Do you have PMS that takes over and your partner doesn't know whether angry you or happy you is going to walk in the door? Like what happens in the 5 to 7 days leading up to your period? And then what happens when you get your period? Do you have pain? How severe is that pain? Is that pain causing you to not be able to leave the house and actually live your life? Because that kind of pain, also perpetually normalized, kills me. How, if you sprain your ankle, that's a sign that you sprained your ankle, right? Like you have pain and and you go to the doctor to try and figure out what to do, or you break a bone or whatever. Pain in any other body part is considered a sign that there's something wrong. Uterine pain, not so much. It's like when your uterus hurts, it's like, oh, it's normal.
I know.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. This stuff is so batshit crazy, if you'll pardon my saying. So that's like when you start thinking about it, you're like, what the hell? But then the question becomes sort of what should people do about it? I know that they should buy the book, read it, but the truth is, I think that you talk a lot about sort of taking control of our hormone. Well, you talk about it. It's your thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so you really pay attention to all these symptoms, and then you start to determine, what the patterns are. And so I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is start to know if you're ovulating. So track your cervical fluid, track your basal body temperature. So that's your temperature first thing upon awakening before doing anything else. And that will tell you, because it's low before ovulation and it goes up higher after ovulation. And so that's going to tell you if and when you have ovulated in your cycle. And having that kind of data on your body is literally priceless, because what if you're not ovulating, then you need to figure out why you're not ovulating, because ovulation, I call it the star of the show. I truly believe that ovulation is sort of like the star of everything. Like, it's how we're able to make adequate amounts of the sex hormones that we really need. And so starting there is a really good place to begin. And it's easy, like it's not that hard. And I trust that all women can do this, because we're all intelligent, smart human beings. And we want to take control of our bodies, because we don't want to constantly be looking outside of ourselves for answers. Because I really believe that we have a lot of the answers already. We don't really have a lot of confidence in how our bodies function. So we're constantly just looking outside of ourselves. So start there, everyone. Start with the tracking of your cycle. I laid this all out in the first chapter of my book, so I made it really easy. And then I think the second thing is, what do you have the most control over? So starting there. Do you have some control over the food that you're eating? Do you have control over the stress that you have in your life currently? Like, are there things that you can take off of your plate? Are there things you can delegate? Are there things that you can just get rid of completely? Like, what is it that you feel you have the most control over that you can start to make changes in? For the most part, people say food. And that's, really where I have everyone start, because ultimately we can't out supplement a bad diet. And if we're stressed, it's going to do a lot of damage that will unfortunately undo a lot of what we do when we eat good food. So ultimately, like, you have to figure out where you can start. It might be, for some people, it might be so difficult that they feel like the only thing they can do is think about going to bed half an hour earlier. And that alone can have wondrous effects. So that's, incremental baby steps is oftentimes, especially now when we're really maxed out. I mean, externally, life is just so intense, especially in the US, that, and I know in so many other countries as well. I'm just speaking from my own experience here, but I think that that's really what we need to think about. And so much of what I talk about, it's not like rocket science. This is not anything different to what anyone else might be saying about hormonal health and getting your health in check. It's just that I relate this back to your menstrual cycle and how all of these things you're doing are showing up as menstrual cycle related problems, like
And to be
period pain.
fair, you're saying that honestly, she's not selling herself. She's selling herself short, because she says it in a kind of fun, accessible, real way. Like, you read a book about how to get your health back together, and it's so overwhelming about, cut out this and don't do this, and, do this. And I just feel like you make it very manageable in a way that just is sort of I feel like is general health. I would say the same things about sexual health also, like get the sleep, get the nutritional components that you need, pay attention.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Someone just had a question here about that. Like, are there stressors that we might not know are stressors? And that's such a good question. And it's something I talked about. And I really think that this is a big issue, because you don't know what you don't know. And so when you think about the fact that light at night is a huge problem for so many of us. We're constantly surrounded by screens, whether it's our computers, our phones, other iPads, all of this stuff, and TVs as well. So this light at night, this blue light that's constantly coming at us, is totally changing the way your body makes melatonin and cortisol. And cortisol is supposed to be high in the day, melatonin's low, and then they switch. And that switch doesn't really happen when we are constantly surrounded by all this artificial light at night. So that's one of the biggest ones I think we are affected by. I think electromagnetic fields are also a big problem, or EMFs. So I think that something like turning off Wi-Fi routers at night, having them all on a power strip and shutting that stuff down can be really helpful in terms of getting better sleep. I also think too, like the unseen things. So is there a light that's shining into your bedroom? I used to have that in New York City, a street light shining into my bedroom. So I had to have darker blinds to block that out. So things like that. And again, like other stuff too. Are you sleeping in a bed with someone who snores? I mean, Hayden and I have definitely spent many nights separately because of the fact that I can't do that. Like, I will not be able to function if I get constantly interrupted sleep. So this is stuff that we just sort of normalize and we're like, oh, no big deal. Right.
And I have to throw in the cortisol. This is so interesting. Is talk about raising cortisol levels, which the blue light does.
Yes.
High cortisol levels lowers your testosterone levels. So for those who are still worried about their sex, I have to just throw this stuff in because, like, I hear
yes.
it now. A couple people have asked about PCOS. I guess some of the questions have come in about PCOS, the color of your blood. You can kind of pick what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So
we should talk about the color of your blood. I think that's a good one.
Perfect.
We can totally talk about PCOS too. So the color of your blood
is... There's so many questions. People were asking about like stomach aches and constipation. I mean, I feel like we could go on and on and on and on. So you'll have to pick your topics.
Well, just so you all know, I did not spare any detail in this book. I am a total nerd. I feel like I did an insane amount of research. I wrote about every possible thing I feel like I've been asked about over the years that I could fit into this book. I felt like I had to cut like 20,000 words. And I know you can relate to this because you wrote a book too. It's insane. So
you can put the 20,000 words into your next book. You have a third book written.
Girl, I'm not writing another book. Are you crazy? I cannot do that to myself. I am just on the tip of recovery at this point from last year and the year before. But whatever, maybe never say never. Shouldn't say never. But when it comes to period blood color, that's one of those really confusing things too. So oftentimes people will say to me, oh, well, my doctor said that like I have brown blood and it's totally normal and whatever. So what I love to see is, not that I'm actually seeing it, but what I love to hear from my clients is your period starts like, it could be a darker red, but it starts as red. So it's not starting as like black or dark brown or rusty color or anything like
clumpy?
That. It's starting.
Clumpy?
Yeah, we don't want clumpy. I'm getting there. Yeah, I know. So we really want it to be sort of I like to see a vibrant red color. That, doesn't necessarily start that way. It starts maybe a little bit darker because everyone should know slower moving blood becomes more oxidized. It becomes darker. So that makes sense. But what I find a lot of the time is women will experience brown blood spotting, things like that. And so oftentimes that, to me, that is related to structural stuff. And that's not the case every time. But structurally speaking, I find that if there is, like a tilted uterus or a uterus that is malpositioned, it's harder to get the blood out. So the blood moves even slower. So this is oftentimes leftover blood from the previous cycle. And I've been working with a practitioner who practices something called Mercier therapy. It was developed by another amazing practitioner named Jennifer Mercier. And so this is like deep pelvic visceral therapy. So it's hardcore. It's like getting in there, externally, but getting in there. And this is really getting blood flow in there, moving around your pelvic organs to make sure that they are, they're in the correct position. Because if they're not, then like I said, we run into issues. And Jennifer did this work a lot of the time for people who were struggling with fertility problems and has had amazing success. Anyway, I've done this and I was also experiencing brown blood spotting in the lead up to my period. I'm 41. I feel like, these things are starting to happen now. And it's completely changed it. It's gone completely. So I find this really interesting and I'm constantly experimenting. It's Mercier. Mercier therapy. Yes. Yeah. And look up Jennifer. She's on Instagram. She's trained practitioners as well. That's how I was working with this person in New Jersey. So anyway, the point is that the brown blood thing I think is definitely very much related to the structural side of things. However, also too, like once you change your diet and also exercising helps as well. I find that definitely changes the color of your blood. You'll find that there's like a fresher color looking blood. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I want to say too is that on the flip side of that, you might see a lighter color. So like pinkish or watery looking type of blood. That is to me often a sign that estrogen is not building your uterine lining enough. And so oftentimes that's accompanied by a shorter period. So it's like just a day or two, maybe just spotting, but you notice it's just like pinkier, more watery, and it just doesn't look like actual like blood, viscous blood. So that's something too. And then the texture of it, Same thing like you just said. The clumpiness, not really trying to have like clumpy, crushed up blueberry looking type blood. You want it to really be flowing, almost like maple syrup in a way. And so it looks like, viscous blood versus like a clumpiness, or just like, again, like I said before, really, really just like pale and in sort of scanty and not like actual flow. So that's kind of what you're going for.
Somebody just asked, and I think this sort of gets back to the heart of things. They want to know how what you eat, or probably how you sleep, how does that affect like the color of the blood or the length of the period? Like, how is that all relevant?
Yeah, it's all relevant in the sense that everything you eat is going to affect your menstrual cycle. And people are like, how is that possible? And so what we have to remember, first of all, I'll start with the first tenet, and that's blood sugar stabilization. So when our blood sugar is unstable, and what that means is you've eaten something, it's likely got too much sugar or too many refined carbs, or you don't have enough protein or fat with whatever you ate. And so what happens is it spikes up your blood glucose, and then your pancreas responds. It sends out insulin to move that glucose into your cells. Sometimes it's just too much, so you have that spike, and then you have a crash, right? So your insulin is now moved all that glucose out really fast, and so you now have a glucose crash. And that glucose crash causes all kinds of things, right? So it causes the moodiness and the brain fog and the cravings, exactly, and the hunger. How that plays into your ovarian and reproductive function is that when you have chronically elevated insulin from having all of this glucose in your bloodstream, that actually changes how your ovaries function. So our ovaries actually have insulin receptors on them. And so when we have all of this insulin, it actually changes what your ovaries are doing. So in some cases, not all, but generally speaking, your ovaries will start to produce more testosterone. So it triggers the production of testosterone from your ovaries versus the estrogen that they're supposed to be making to get your whole menstrual cycle moving in the direction it's supposed to move in, which is pushing it towards ovulation. So without this estrogen, too much testosterone, what then happens is those little follicles on your ovary that house your eggs, and that egg is going to be released at ovulation, they start to be stunted. They don't grow properly because they don't have the right hormone signals to help them grow. And so this testosterone stops that. And then we end up in a situation where we have these cysts on our ovaries, and our ovaries are not ovulating.
And that's the PCOS connection, correct?
Exactly.
Right?
Not everyone develops PCOS. Like if you're genetically susceptible to that, then yes. That to me is a key component, a big underlying factor for PCOS is blood sugar dysregulation. And so this is crazy. Like excess insulin actually causes an increase in LH. And so that's luteinizing hormone. That's a hormone that comes from your brain that spikes up to trigger ovulation. So if we have too much LH, it can't spike up to the level it needs to spike up to cause ovulation. So we end up running into a situation where we don't ovulate consistently. So I've seen this. This was definitely my problem as a teenager. And I've seen this for years and years with clients. And once they get their blood sugar under control, all kinds of miracles happen. And so that's why, I'm a big proponent of testing your blood sugar, using a glucometer. I explain all of this in the book. I walk you step by step through this so that you can see what's happening with your blood sugar on this level. It's such good biohacking. It's good information to have about how your body works. So that's like one way. The next way is nutrients.
Term, by the way, biohacking.
Oh, I know. I think that's a Dave Asprey.
Oh,
hell no. No, that's a Dave Asprey term, the bulletproof diet guy.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes, bulletproof coffee.
We should be biohacking.
I know, we should be. I know. We need a nice feminine version of biohacking, though. I feel like I need a term.
Okay, let's work on it. A picture.
I know we will. We will work on it. But yeah, so like these, that's really crucial. And then the other part of this is nutrient deficiencies. So we need magnesium for our ovaries to function properly. We need selenium. Like selenium is actually found in healthy follicles on your eggs. Or healthy follicles on your ovaries, sorry. And, so we need magnesium and we need zinc as well in order for the follicles to grow properly. So we need all of these micronutrients. We also need big ones as well, like the vitamins, like A and the B complex. So we need folate and B12 and B6 for our ovarian function as well. So all of these play a role. And so when we're chronically undernourished, which is the case for so many people, we run into problems with our menstrual cycle, and nobody ever understands that connection, because again, you run into problems with your menstrual cycle, and what do? You go to the doctor, and the doctor says, okay, well, we'll put you on the pill for all manner of period problems. So there's a lot. There's like so much there. And I wrote about it in detail.
So, and I know we're kind of running out of time, because I always try to keep these to a half hour, and you have to promise me you'll come back. But
of course, I would love to.
5 minutes, but
no, it does. We can go for another couple of minutes if you want. I feel like there's a lot of questions there.
Wow. Okay with you.
I'm totally fine. Yeah, no, I have more time. I definitely have another 15 minutes, so that's cool.
Great. Okay, so what do you? I have another 10, so that's perfect.
Okay,
so
good.
Why don't we? Can you talk a little about painful periods, and can you talk a little bit about? Well, let's start with that, and then breast connection. But yeah.
Oh yes, I know somebody had asked about breast pain. Okay.
And somebody just asked about cayenne pepper, whether that helps. They said improving circulation and therefore period health. I never heard that, so.
It certainly couldn't help. It couldn't hurt. I don't, I think that any like sort of warming foods or warming spices, yes, that, according to Chinese medicine, that's really helpful for blood circulation and circulation to your reproductive organs. So for sure, that could be an option. That's just one tiny part of it though. And I always want to talk about the fact that from a foundational perspective, this is the stuff you have to do. Like, this is why I wrote the protocol in the book the way I did. It was nutrition, blood sugar, gut health, liver function, stress, and thyroid, because we really have to look at all of those pillars in order to have a foundation for healthy hormones. And, we all got the supplement graveyard. I've got plenty of supplements, and I've taken a million over the years. And I feel like the tendency is to just take a bunch of different supplements for, each individual problem. But we all know this, right? Building the foundation of a house is really boring. Decorating the house is so fun. That's what I think of when I think of supplements, right? The supplements are the decoration.
So funny. I love that.
It's so true. And so I find that like that part, those pieces are hard and they're not super inspiring, but I promise you, that is what is going to get the results. So when you talk about
the real food is what you're saying, the real food.
Yeah, the real food, exactly.
Real food.
And
if you take
testing your blood sugar and all of it.
If you take nothing else from us today, the real food. It just is, if you can build the real food into your life, it just changes your life. It changes your health. It changes your sex life. It changes everything. Yeah.
It really does. Yes, I could not agree with you more. Exactly. Your sex life. I know this is all so connected. That's the thing that's so crazy, is that we're constantly told that these are all disjointed, not connected parts of our health and our psyche. And I'm like, wait a second, like your sex drive, your menstrual cycle. I mean, when you think about the fact that if you're not ovulating, your sex drive is going to be like plateaued. It's going to be basically a straight line. You're not going to have very much at all. And that's because ovulation is a driver for estradiol and testosterone, the two hormones that drive your sex drive. So this is why we have to be consistently ovulating. And if you're not, there's potentially multiple reasons why that might be, but I think that's one of the first steps for us. And so coming back to what were we talking about again?
We were talking about painful periods.
Painful periods, yes.
PCOS.
So painful periods, I think the first thing is figuring out why you have painful periods. And oftentimes what I see is just underlying chronic inflammation. A lot of inflammation happening, the inflammation that we, can't see, inflammation, and that's the internal inflammation. So that's driven by, again, nutrient deficiencies. It's driven by a high amount of high omega-6 inflammatory oils in our diets, not enough omega-3s, so that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is off. And oftentimes all you really have to do is start to reduce your consumption of the omega-6s. Most of the time you find that in restaurant food. You'll find that in canola oil and peanut oil and all of those seed oils. So if you reduce your consumption of that, that's going to help lower that inflammatory response in your body significantly. If you take a fish oil supplement on top of that, or increase your intake of fatty fish, that'll bring the omega-3 up. So it's one little simple thing that you can do to start to reduce that inflammatory response. And that inflammatory.
Turmeric. Somebody asked, but I.
Oh yes. Oh, totally. Turmeric is a great one too.
Turmeric. I love it.
I recommend it in the book. I feel like it's a huge one. In fact, it's highly recommended, curcumin that is, for endometriosis as part of a treatment protocol for endometriosis. So oftentimes if we reduce our inflammatory load, our period pain is going to go down. And also there's a structural component as well. Like I was just talking about doing pelvic floor physical therapy, Mercier therapy, Mayan abdominal massage therapy, anything like that that's going to move those organs into the place they're supposed to be in, get blood flow going down there. That can also be a part of this as well. And then the third thing is another condition, right? So sometimes there's pathology, sometimes there isn't. So endometriosis, uterine fibroids, adenomyosis, ovarian cysts, polyps, all of these can trigger period pain, and really serious period pain in the case of something like endo.
So don't you feel, I feel like physicians are better at ruling out those things than they are. It's when they can't find those things that they sort of say, well, don't worry about it.
Yes. And then just take a pill. The problem is I find that there isn't extensive investigation, especially with a condition like endo or adeno, just because the diagnosis of these conditions is really challenging still. I mean, like with both of them, you have to be surgically opened up. I mean, like that's unbelievable that we're here in 2021. And that's our only option for people who are struggling with this, because as you know, like this basically can start from the very first period you have. So we have 10-year-olds who have endometriosis, or 11-year-olds, and they're getting these excruciating periods every single month. And now we have to, there's like a whole process to figuring out what could be going on with them. So with endo, it is a combination, right? So it's a combination of figuring out what's going on with their diet and their lifestyle, looking at certain blood markers. I'm no expert in that, but there are many doctors who are, and then also doing like an actual physical exam.
Right. I'd also just question, like remind the mothers who are watching here, like if your 10-year-old daughter is having period pain, that's not okay. Do you know what I mean? No. It's not okay. And she's not whiny. I mean, she may be whiny. I can't answer that, but I'm assuming she's not just whiny. And this is like a time to take them seriously. And you can have an impact on kind of their life as much as you can, how they're eating, whether they're sleeping, how stressed they are. I mean, this is such a stressful time. So I just need to put a word out there, because when you said that about, girls are getting the period younger and younger, which is a whole other interesting story. At
like 8 and stuff now.
So that is fascinating. We only have a couple more minutes. So breast pain or young periods, you pick a time.
I'll say both. I'll say something short for both of them. I'll say like with, young teenagers or younger girls getting their period. I mean, there's multiple reasons why that could be happening. I 100% think it's like the stress in our lives, the environmental chemicals. I'm convinced that these environmental chemicals, I talked about this, like BPA, phthalates, a bunch of them are so incredibly harmful to our health, and it doesn't matter. So getting the plastics out of their environment and doing the best that you can with all of that, fragrances, all of it is so harmful to our natural endogenous hormones. So that's one thing. But yes, like you said, Sheva, if your child is in serious pain every month, definitely get to a doctor, especially with endometriosis, because it's so challenging. I think you should look into Nancy's Nook. It's a Facebook group. There are tons of endometriosis resources in there. It can be really, really helpful. There are also a lot of endometriosis organizations as well now. And doctors are becoming more aware of it. So that's the other thing too. So it really requires like a full workup, like a lot of different things that is past the scope of this call, but ultimately that's what I suggest. So definitely don't ignore it, because it will get worse. There's no doubt about that. Breast pain, oftentimes, this is multifaceted, but I would say breast pain obviously mostly shows up in the lead up to your period. And so remember, your period is an inflammatory event. And what I mean when I say that is, in order for your uterine muscles to contract, these hormone-like substances called prostaglandins are released, right? So they're released in your uterus, and that's what causes the muscles to contract. And so when they're contracting, blood is released. So these prostaglandins that are triggered are like, they can be inflammatory. So this is where the omega-6, omega-3 thing comes back. So if you have a lot of those omega-6s, they make more pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. Omega-3s make less inflammatory prostaglandins. So we really want to think about that balance. And that's where I think that, we have so much more control over our health than we've been led to believe. So that's, I would say that that's, a big part of the period pain side of things. I don't want to keep going because I know you have to go too.
Yeah,
So
I do have to go. It
yes,
makes me so sad. I'm definitely gonna have you back.
I know.
Nicole, you are just
Okay.
a wealth. I mean, we could just go for another hour. I have so
I
many
know.
questions, and people have so many questions. I just want to thank you so much for making time. I just really
Of
do.
course.
Like, I feel like we all have to kind of stick together. Us, us body girls. I don't know what else to. So thank you. I'm gonna blow you a kiss. And
Thank you.
We
Thank
will
you for having me.
keep being in touch because you're the best.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
people
And thank
can
you,
find
everyone.
People can. Here's Nicole's book, Fix Your
Yeah.
Period, written backwards, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? I love it. And where do people find you, Nicole? Besides
Okay,
on
so you
Instagram?
can
Is
find
there-
me on Instagram here, Nicole M. Jardim. You can find me on my website, Nicole Jardim. My book is on fixyourperiod.com. It has bonuses and booksellers all over the world. So if you want to find it, you can on there. And thank you all so much for your questions. These are so good. I wish I could get to more of them. I feel like I need to do a few Instagram lives this week to catch up and answer everyone's questions because I've got so many.
I am
So
definitely
yes.
going to have you back to answer.
Okay, thank you. And I know I'm having you on, I think next month or the month after when your book is out too, which I'm so excited about. Yeah, you guys, I know you obviously follow this amazing lady and she is incredible and her book is, I've read it and reviewed it. It's just beyond mind blowing.
I feel like I'm running a year behind Nicole here. So she's got, this is your life.
Yeah,
all right,
well,
goodbye.
Get ready,
have a
sister.
Great afternoon or night, wherever you guys are. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much. Bye, Sheva. Thank you.